Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The October sun bathed the tinted windows of the head office of Reynolds and Partners, one of the most influential marketing firms in New York. Inside, in his spacious office furnished with mahogany furniture and contemporary paintings, Charlotte Reynolds was leafing through the files of candidates for a strategic management position. Charlotte was known for her keen sense of excellence, and for her inflexible, often prejudiced, mind. For years, she favored those who resembled her, unconsciously, or consciously, minimizing the talents that didn't fit her image. That day, the file of Marcus Thompson was on her desk. Marcus, a recent Harvard graduate, had an exceptional background, prestigious internships, award-winning projects, influential recommendations. Yet, Charlotte frowned as she reviewed his application. The interview was brief. Marcus entered, impeccably dressed, with a confident stride, and greeted Charlotte with measured politeness. His gaze was direct, yet calm, as if he already knew what was going to happen. Charlotte, unaware of her own bias, sized him up, noting every detail, every gesture, every word with critical attention. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her tone measured but slightly condescending, "your CV is impressive. But I'm not sure you're a good fit for our company culture." Marcus did not lose his composure. He replied calmly, "I understand, Ms. Reynolds. But perhaps my perspective could complement yours." Charlotte shook her head, already resolute. Her prejudices spoke louder than the facts. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. We'll move on to other candidates." A silence fell. Marcus stood up, put away his file, and approached the desk. His gaze met Charlotte's, and an unexpected shiver ran through the headmistress. Before leaving the room, Marcus murmured, with a slight, enigmatic smile, "You might regret your decision." Charlotte laughed inwardly. How could a mere candidate possibly unsettle her? She thought she'd seen it all in her career. Yet, what she didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just another black candidate. Behind that facade lay a powerful, influential identity, capable of changing the game. The revelation that was about to unfold would not only challenge her career choices but also confront Charlotte with her own prejudices in ways she never could have imagined. At that precise moment, she did not yet know that destiny had just knocked on her door in the form of a calm, determined, and irresistibly brilliant young man. The day after the interview, Charlotte Reynolds tried to banish Marcus Thompson's calm and confident presence from her mind. But every time she thought about his direct gaze and enigmatic smile, an unexpected unease crept in. She had always thought she knew the business world, believing that her experience and authority were enough to properly assess candidates. Now, she was beginning to doubt it. In her office, she leafed through other candidates' files, but none caught her attention. Her assistant, Peter Lang, entered discreetly with a stack of documents. "Mrs. Reynolds," Peter said cautiously, "there's a call for you. We're insisting, it's urgent." Charlotte frowned. She didn't like being disturbed, especially for unknown emergencies. But something in Peter's tone caught her attention. She picked up the phone. Charlotte Reynolds speaking. A deep, calm voice replied. "Hello, Ms. Reynolds. I'm Marcus Thompson." Charlotte's heart stopped for a moment. How dare this young candidate call her directly? She forced herself to answer calmly. "Yes. Mr. Thompson. What can I do for you?" Marcus replied with surprising calm. "I simply wanted to introduce myself under my real name and in my real position. I am Marcus Thompson, but I also represent the Thompson & Associates Group, a partner company you may be familiar with, and which has a direct impact on recruitment decisions in your sector." Charlotte paled. She felt a cold sweat run down her back. Her decision to reject him was taking on a dimension she had never anticipated. He was no longer just a black candidate to whom she was refusing a position, he was someone whose position and influence far exceeded what she had imagined. "Marcus. I didn't know." She stammered, feeling her authority waver. "I understand, Ms. Reynolds," Marcus replied calmly. "But I hope you will soon realize that judging by appearances can have serious consequences. We could collaborate in a much more constructive way, if you are willing to reconsider your perspective." After hanging up, Charlotte remained frozen, phone in hand. The world she thought she controlled had suddenly cracked. She had rejected someone she completely underestimated, and the lesson had only just begun. In the days that followed, Charlotte Reynolds found no peace. Every decision at the office felt burdensome, every smile from her colleagues seemed suspicious. The name of Marcus Thompson, it kept coming back to her thoughts, like a shadow that refused to leave her. As she was preparing for a strategic meeting with the board of directors, her phone vibrated again. This time, it was a message. "Ms. Reynolds, I hope you are ready to acknowledge your mistakes. We could discuss a fruitful collaboration." Marcus. Charlotte felt a wave of panic. How dare this mere candidate contact her like this? She forced herself to calm down, but her hands were trembling slightly. During the meeting, Charlotte attempted to project her usual authority. However, Gregory Lane, an influential member of the council, asked an unexpected question. "Charlotte, have you reviewed Marcus Thompson's profile for our partnership project?" Charlotte's cheeks flushed red. Yes, we've decided to pursue other candidates," she stammered, but her voice betrayed her hesitation. Gregory smiled, intrigued. "Really? I thought his name already carried significant weight in our network." Charlotte felt her authority waver. She suddenly understood that Marcus's rejection was not a simple professional refusal, it had ramifications for her reputation and her relationships within the company. That evening, on her way home, Charlotte reflected on everything that had just happened. Her underlying racism and distrust of Marcus had just put her in a difficult position. She had underestimated a man who possessed not only talent but also power and influence. Deep down, she knew this situation would force her to confront her prejudices. And she began to realize that Marcus Thompson wasn't just a candidate, he was the catalyst that would disrupt her perfectly controlled world. On Monday morning, Charlotte Reynolds entered her office with an unusual sense of unease. Emails had piled up, each one seeming heavier than the last. Several of them came from influential partners and clients, all mentioning the name of Marcus Thompson. Charlotte felt her stomach clench. She knew that her impulsive and prejudiced judgment could now have serious consequences. But she hadn't yet grasped the full extent of the situation. Shortly after, Peter Lang, his faithful assistant, rushed in. "Madam, you have an urgent meeting with our main partner, Thompson and Associates." Charlotte flinched. She had never imagined that name would appear on her desk like this. "Very well, send an email to reschedule my other appointments," she said in a trembling voice, trying to remain calm. During the video conference, Marcus appeared on the screen. His face was serene, but his eyes expressed undeniable authority. Charlotte felt her personal power waver. "Good morning, Ms. Reynolds," Marcus began, his voice soft but firm. "I wanted to discuss the possibility of collaborating on the project you had in mind. I believe our teams could achieve exceptional results together." Charlotte swallowed hard. Her pride and dignity were at stake. "Marcus. She began, but no word seemed quite right. Marcus continued calmly. "I understand that our initial meeting wasn't ideal. But I assure you that your previous judgment doesn't reflect what we could accomplish together." Silence fell. Charlotte realized that Marcus wasn't there for revenge, but to demonstrate his professionalism and influence. And she understood that every decision she made from now on would be scrutinized, and that her prejudices could cost her dearly. That evening, on her way home, Charlotte felt unsettled. She had never before faced a situation where her bias and implicit racism had a direct impact on her career and reputation. For the first time, she found herself reflecting on her choices, her judgments, and how she treated others. Marcus Thompson was no longer just a candidate. He had become a living lesson, and Charlotte knew that the consequences would be ruthless if she didn't correct her mistakes. In the days that followed, Charlotte Reynolds began to feel the first tangible effects of her mistake. Discreet but insistent messages from Thompson and Associates partners arrived in her inbox. Some long-standing clients expressed interest in working with Marcus, while subtly suggesting that Charlotte's decision could affect their future relationships with him, Reynolds and partners. At the office, Charlotte felt the atmosphere change. Colleagues who had always respected her began exchanging furtive glances whenever she passed by. She had always controlled her environment, but now, Marcus Thompson's shadow hung over her and her authority. During an internal meeting, Gregory Lane, an influential member of the board of directors, addressed the issue directly. "Charlotte, I noticed we declined Marcus Thompson's application, but his recent projects have been discussed throughout the industry. Do you think we should reconsider our position?" Charlotte felt a shiver run down her spine. The council no longer supported her initial decision, and her judgment was being publicly questioned. She tried to respond confidently, but her voice betrayed her unease. I think we need to stay true to our selection criteria." Gregory nodded slowly, but his gaze never left Charlotte. She understood that he knew the extent of Marcus's influence, and that his personal opinion was no longer enough to maintain his credibility. Later that day, Charlotte received an unexpected invitation to a networking event hosted by Thompson and Associates. Marcus wouldn't be there in person, but his name dominated the invitation. Charlotte's pride was brought crashing down to earth. If she wanted to maintain her position and the respect of her network, she needed to act quickly and strategically. Returning home that evening, Charlotte felt besieged. Every past decision, every unacknowledged prejudice, every hasty judgment seemed to come back to haunt her. She realized she could no longer ignore the consequences of her implicit racism. Marcus Thompson was no longer just a rejected candidate, he had become the mirror reflecting her weaknesses and her inability to recognize talent beyond appearances. For the first time, Charlotte wondered if she had the resources, and the humility, necessary to correct her mistake before it became irreversible. A week after sending out the networking invitation, Charlotte Reynolds was in a meeting with her team when she received an unusual call. The name on the phone made her heart race, Marcus Thompson. She took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds," Marcus said calmly, but with an authority that commanded respect. "Hello, Marcus," replied Charlotte, trying to hide her concern. "What can I do for you?" Marcus wasted no time. "I've organized a special presentation today with our partners. Your competitors and colleagues will be there. I wanted to personally invite you to attend." Charlotte paled. She knew this event wouldn't be just a professional formality, it was an opportunity for her past judgment and behavior to be publicly assessed. She reluctantly agreed, aware that refusing would be seen as a weakness. When she entered the conference room, she was struck by the scale of the event. Influential leaders from across the industry were in attendance. In the center, Marcus Thompson, impeccably dressed in a suit, smiled confidently. Charlotte felt a mixture of respect and awe. Marcus steps forward and takes the floor. "Today, I want to share with you projects that I hope will inspire fruitful collaboration. But I also want to remind you of something fundamental: talent and competence are not measured by appearance." An impressive silence followed. All eyes were on Charlotte. She felt her face burn with shame. Marcus's words weren't just a subtle lesson, they were a public confrontation, elegant but relentless. After the presentation, several executives came to congratulate Marcus on his professionalism and intelligence. Charlotte realized that her prejudices and initial rejection had isolated her within this influential network. She had underestimated a man whose charisma and influence surpassed anything she had imagined. As she left the room, Charlotte realized that her position and authority were no longer guaranteed. Marcus Thompson was no longer just a candidate she had rejected, he had become an indispensable player, and she had to find a way to rectify her mistake before it was too late. After the event Marcus had organized, Charlotte Reynolds returned to her office with a feeling of unease she had never experienced before. The weight of her mistake followed her everywhere, and she felt her reputation, carefully built up over the years, beginning to falter. That evening, alone in her office, she looked at Marcus Thompson's file once more. Every line, every accomplishment, every recommendation now took on a different meaning. She had rejected a candidate not for lack of competence, but for her personal biases. Peter Lang knocked on the door. "Madam, I know you've had some difficult weeks, but I think Marcus Thompson could really be an asset to us if—" Charlotte looked up, interrupting Peter. "Yes, I know, but I need to think about how to handle this situation without appearing weak." Peter agreed, understanding his boss's dilemma. But Charlotte realized that this reflection could no longer be a simple private introspection. She had to act publicly and concretely. The next day, she decided to contact Marcus to suggest a meeting. This time, she wanted to listen before judging, and she wanted to understand how to fix her mistake. During this meeting, Marcus remained calm and professional. "Ms. Reynolds," he said gently, "I'm not here to humiliate you. But I believe we all have moments when our prejudices hold us back. The question is, are you ready to acknowledge them and act on them?" Charlotte sensed the truth in his words. She understood that her arrogance and biases had been a barrier, not only for herself, but also for the company. She then promised herself to change her attitude, to learn to recognize talent without being influenced by skin color or appearances. This meeting marked a turning point. Charlotte did not yet know how difficult the road ahead would be, nor how long it would take to regain the trust of Marcus and the other partners, but she felt for the first time in a long time that she was taking a step towards a real personal and professional transformation. A few days after her meeting with Marcus, Charlotte Reynolds decided it was time to translate her realization into concrete actions. She called an emergency meeting with her management team. "I've realized that some of our recent decisions weren't fully aligned with our values," Charlotte announced in a firm but humble voice. "Starting today, we're going to review our recruitment and assessment processes to ensure equal opportunities and recognize talent without bias." Her words, unexpected coming from Charlotte, provoked a mixture of surprise and admiration among her colleagues. For the first time, they saw a side of their director that had never been shown, the ability to recognize her mistakes and to act to correct them. Meanwhile, Marcus Thompson continued to subtly but effectively demonstrate his influence. He organized a networking seminar to which he invited industry leaders and key partners, including Charlotte and her team. The event was perfectly orchestrated to highlight talent, competence, and the importance of diversity in business. Charlotte attended the seminar with a mixture of apprehension and respect. Marcus, elegant and self-assured, presented the projects brilliantly, while also weaving in powerful messages about inclusion and recognizing merit. Every word resonated in Charlotte's mind like a lesson she had never wanted to hear but which now felt undeniably necessary. After the seminar, Marcus approached her. "Charlotte, you've already taken the first step by acknowledging your mistakes. The rest will depend on your ability to transform this awareness into concrete and lasting actions." Charlotte nodded, aware that the road ahead would be long. She knew that her professional relationships and reputation were now intertwined with Marcus's influence. But for the first time, she felt a genuine determination. She would redeem herself, not to save herself, but to prove that she could grow, learn, and act with integrity. This chapter of his life was only the beginning of a difficult journey, where respect and competence would finally prevail over prejudice and arrogance. A few weeks after the seminar organized by Marcus, Charlotte Reynolds set about implementing the changes she had promised. She launched a complete overhaul of the recruitment processes and introduced inclusion and anti-bias training for the entire management team. But not all of her initiatives were welcomed. Some managers, used to the hierarchy and Charlotte's traditional way of doing things, openly resisted. Linda Harper, the marketing director, dared to express her disagreement during a meeting. "Charlotte, I understand your intentions, but changing our methods now risks disrupting our teams and slowing down our projects." Charlotte took a deep breath. The temptation to give in to avoid conflict was strong, but she remembered Marcus's words, "Transformation requires courage and perseverance." "Linda," Charlotte replied calmly but firmly, "we cannot continue to make decisions based on implicit biases. It is time to act with integrity and fairness." Outside, Marcus subtly observed the changes. He had encouraged Charlotte to take the reins of this transformation, but he knew that the real test lay in her ability to convince her colleagues and to keep her promises despite the resistance. One afternoon, Charlotte received a report concerning the recruitment of a highly qualified black candidate for a strategic position. Internal objections refused to acknowledge his potential, repeating old habits and prejudices. Charlotte felt the old reflex of judgment resurface, but she strove to remain objective. She summoned Linda and other executives for a meeting. "I want us to evaluate each candidate solely on their skills and potential," she said. "Prejudice must be left at the door. Those who cannot follow these principles will no longer be decision-makers on our team." It was a pivotal moment. Some managers reluctantly agreed, others seethed with discontent, but Charlotte understood that the road to respect and equality would never be easy. Marcus, ever vigilant, had set Charlotte on the path to lasting transformation. For the first time, Charlotte felt that her actions weren't just for herself, they had the power to change the entire culture of her company. But she also knew that this battle for justice and integrity had only just begun. A few months later, Charlotte Reynolds faced one of the most critical moments of her career. A major strategic project had just emerged, involving international partners and colossal budgets. Everyone was expecting quick and decisive decisions from management. Among the candidates proposed to lead the project was a young black director, Derek Williams. He clearly stood out for his skills and innovative vision. But some conservative managers, still influenced by implicit prejudices, whispered that he might not fit into the company culture. Charlotte felt the old temptation to judge by appearances return, but she remembered the weeks she had spent learning about and observing Marcus Thompson and confronting her own biases. This time, she decided to put her prejudices aside. During a critical meeting, objections flew thick and fast. Linda Harper expressed her skepticism. "Charlotte, I'm not saying Derek isn't competent, but this position is crucial. Shouldn't we choose someone with more experience in this type of project?" Charlotte took a deep breath. Her gaze fell upon Derek's CV and results, and she remembered Marcus's lesson: evaluate talent, not skin color, not stereotypes. "I will not choose anyone for this project based on prejudice or personal impressions," she replied calmly but firmly. "Derek Williams has demonstrated his competence and leadership. He is the best choice for this position, and we must give him this opportunity." A silence fell. Some managers nodded reluctantly, others seemed surprised by her determination. But Charlotte felt a surge of pride. She had just taken a decisive step, proving to herself and others that her change was genuine and that she could make the right decisions despite pressure and resistance. Later that day, Marcus Thompson contacted her by phone. "Charlotte, I wanted to congratulate you. Today, you did what many hesitate to do. You placed merit and competence above prejudice. That's a big step." Charlotte smiled for the first time in a long time, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She knew the road to integrity and inclusion was long, but she had just proven that she was capable of real change. The test was successful, but the final chapter of this transformation had not yet been written. A few weeks after the decision to promote Derek Williams, the atmosphere at Reynolds and Partners, things had changed tangibly. The teams, inspired by the new inclusion policy and Charlotte Reynolds' transformed leadership, were working with renewed enthusiasm. The corporate culture, previously rigid and tinged with implicit bias, was finally beginning to evolve towards fairness and merit. Charlotte, for her part, felt different. She had confronted her biases, acknowledged her mistakes, and learned to listen before judging. She knew this path wasn't easy, but each success of her team reinforced her belief in the path she had chosen. One afternoon, Marcus Thompson paid an impromptu visit to headquarters. His smile was calm, but there was in his eyes the recognition of a job well done. "Charlotte," he said, entering her office, "I wanted to congratulate you personally. You not only acknowledged your mistakes, but you corrected them with courage and determination. Few leaders would have had that clarity of vision." Charlotte felt a surge of genuine emotion. "Thank you, Marcus. You showed me that talent and integrity cannot be ignored. I would never have fully understood without your example." Marcus nodded. "Today, you have gained much more than the trust of your partners and your teams. You have gained self-respect. And it is this self-respect that makes the real difference in leadership." Charlotte smiled, aware that this sentence summed up everything she had gone through: the mistakes, the shame, the confrontation with her prejudices and, finally, the the personal and professional transformation. A few weeks later, at an industry event, Charlotte and Marcus sat side by side, not as superior and rejected candidate, but as respectful partners and equal collaborators. Charlotte's old doubts and prejudices now seemed distant, replaced by a new vision of inclusion, merit, and competence. That day, Charlotte Reynolds finally understood that true authority lay not in the power to reject or judge, but in the ability to recognize, learn, and grow. And in the world she had transformed, Marcus Thompson was not just a catalyst for change, he had become a symbol of justice, competence, and respect, reminding everyone that appearances could never define a person's true worth. Charlotte had paid the price for her mistake, but she emerged stronger, more just, and profoundly transformed. The past of prejudice had given way to a future founded on respect and integrity.